What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my top 70 overall player rankings, also splitting these guys up into different tiers. Originally, I thought I'd be able to go through my Superflex rankings today also. Currently in the process of moving, so those may end up going out tomorrow. So, sorry for not getting those out today, potentially. But we do have the overall player rankings today in this video. If you guys do enjoy, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to see my entire set of rankings, the link is going to be in the description. You just have to download, it's like a Google Sheet. You can just download your own file, check off the players if you want to bring it into your draft, and that'll be deeper than top 70. I think it's top 200 for both one quarterback and Superflex. So check that out if you are interested. Not going to be diving crazy in depth on every single player just because I've talked about these dudes, pretty much at length in previous videos, just kind of going through the overall tiers. So we're going to start off in tier 1. This is going to be my big 3, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey. This has been my top 3 for a while. I just wouldn't really consider any wide receivers over Jefferson and Chase, and then I have CMC locked in as my RB1. If you want to go Bijan or Eckler, I don't think it's crazy, but just for me personally, I would always be going Christian McCaffrey as my first running back. Then moving into tier 2, we're going to have Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, and Travis Kelce. This has also been pretty locked in as my top 9 in terms of the players. The order has switched up a little bit. Probably going to be a little bit lower on Travis Kelce than consensus. If you do want to pick him earlier than this, I don't think it's an egregious pick. I think it becomes a much better pick if you're playing in a smaller league, so 8-team, 10-team, or also if you have a league with a shallow starting lineup, so maybe you just have one flex, only 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. I do think Kelce becomes more valuable in those formats. I just have a tough time taking him over guys like Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Eckler, Bijan. When he is kind of getting up there in the age department, I think the argument over Diggs is a lot stronger. I have him here at number 9, but like I said, there is some kind of room to maneuver there. In tier 3, this is going to be a pretty large tier. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Devontae Adams, Nick Chubb, A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry, Garrett Wilson, Josh Jacobs, and Jonathan Taylor. So these guys pretty much cover the back end of the first round through the mid to late second. I've been consistently high on both Amon-Ra and CeeDee Lamb at the wide receiver position, also pretty low on A.J. Brown compared to consensus. I like Saquon and Pollard over Chubb just due to the receiving upside that both of those guys can bring. I do think at this point there is probably an argument to be made for Tony Pollard over Saquon Barkley. I don't think that would be an egregious pick. I do have Saquon ahead, but they're back-to-back, so you really could go either way with those guys. Then we've got Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor kind of wrapping up this tier. These guys still have some risk. Even though Jacobs signed the 1-year deal, I still think there's risk of him potentially sitting out to end the season if the Raiders aren't in playoff contention. Why is he going to risk his health for a long-term deal? And then Jonathan Taylor, we don't know what team he's going to be playing on. Hopefully that gets settled soon. Also, his ankle injury, is that just kind of leverage he's using against the Colts, or is that actually an issue? We still have to wait for that to play out. But these are players where if they're healthy and playing, they're going to be mid to high-end RB1s for you in your lineup. So I think worth the risk, probably late round 2, you're getting them in round 3. I do think it's a fair price. Now in tier 4, we're going to have Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Mark Andrews, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, and Devonta Smith. So some really strong 2-3 turn wide receivers with Mark Andrews thrown in there. I feel like these wide receivers are, pretty standard in this range, but I do just want to talk about Mark Andrews because I don't see him in most people's top 24. When I just look at, Mark Andrews and what he can bring to the table, you have Kelce going mid-round 1 on pretty much every single platform. If Kelce's going mid-round 1, I just don't think Andrews should be slipping to the mid to late 3rd round like we see on most platforms. Andrews has showcased he can have a very high ceiling, and he's also probably going to be playing in the most pass-heavy offense he's ever been on, at least, alongside Lamar Jackson, the most pass-heavy attack that Lamar has ever led. So I do think he's worth it here at the back end of the second, especially like I talked about with Kelce, if you're playing in a smaller league or a league with a shallower lineup. I think Mark Andrews here, you're probably going to be able to get him in round 3. If you're getting him in round 3, I think he's a very, very strong pick. Now moving over to tier 5, we have Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Ramondre Stevenson, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Lamar Jackson, and DK Metcalf. So this is where we have the elite quarterbacks making an appearance. I'd be willing to take these guys as early as the early, like to mid third round area. I just cannot stomach them in the second round. I think there are other players there that are very talented, and I just can't pass up on those guys. But I would consider them once we kind of get to the third round. The running backs in this tier, Jahmyr Gibbs and Ramondre Stevenson, I think they're kind of in like a tier of their own where they do, kind of deserve to be behind the guys that I have ranked ahead of them, but I do think they deserve to be ranked ahead of the guys that I have in the next tier, in tier 6. And then we have 3 solid, like mid to late round 3 wide receivers, and then Lamar Jackson thrown in here. I do think Lamar belongs in the same tier as those top 3, but I do think he deserves to be at least, a few slots below them, just based on what those 3 did last season. Now in tier 6, we're going to have Breece Hall, Mike Williams, Deebo Samuel, Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, Travis Etienne, Christian Watson, Justin Fields, DJ Moore, and Najee Harris. I think this tier has a pretty interesting group of running backs. I think some of them I'm higher on than consensus, others probably lower on. I'd say I'm probably higher on both Breece Hall and Dameon Pierce, and then probably lower on Travis Etienne, and definitely lower on Najee Harris. I do like Breece Hall to lead this tier. You probably won't have to draft him there. Guys like Dameon Pierce, you may have to get him in round 4. It seems like, kind of counterintuitive, but in more competitive leagues, he actually probably goes later on. Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, with where I have them ranked, probably not going to have any shares of them this season. You can see Mike Williams in this tier. I do value him here, but I would never actually draft him here. Like, if you're going into your drafts, you kind of have to leverage these rankings or whatever rankings you're using with the platform's ADP, because if you were going to take him in round 4, he'll probably be available for you to come back in round 5, so you don't really want to force that pick, but this is where I have him valued. That applies to all these guys, right? Like, if on your platform someone consistently goes way later on, then you can probably wait, get another pick, and then get that player at a value in the later round. And then Justin Fields, I feel like probably also a little bit higher than consensus. Like, if I was forced to with every player going ahead of him, I would end up taking Fields here in the mid-4th round. In tier 7, we have Drake London, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, J.K. Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Deontay Johnson, T.J. Hawkinson, Darren Waller, and Javonte Williams. Got a solid mix here of all 4 positions. I feel like most of these wide receivers are pretty in line with consensus. I guess maybe with the exception of Deontay Johnson, who I'm higher on. I think Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert make sense at the 4-5 turn. Do have Herbert ranked ahead of Burrow, but they're back-to-back. I think they're both nice picks at the 4-5 turn. What I think is interesting, though, is that on some platforms, you'll see Burrow going 3-4 turn, early 4th round, and then you'll see Justin Herbert slip to round 5. If you're going to get that kind of value on Justin Herbert, I don't think he should be going like a full round behind Joe Burrow. I mean, when we look at these two guys' fantasy production, Justin Herbert has the 2 highest scoring seasons. He's just kind of being dinged for last year when he played through a rib injury. So I think Herbert is kind of a nice value this season. Then the running backs in this group, Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Javonte Williams. I think all these guys are interesting in round 5. J.K. Dobbins, one of the best pure runners in the NFL, has the opportunity to expand his workload or just his role in general with a new offensive coordinator. Aaron Jones, probably not going to be a guy with a huge workload, but someone who's just very consistent year after year, very, very efficient also. And then Javonte Williams, coming off the ACL tear, but should be ready to go for week 1. He played in the preseason. Someone who could really put together a monster season, like in the second half, I guess a monster half season, towards the end. These guys coming off the injuries, same with Breece Hall. I think they can peak later on in the year. And then looking at the tight ends, I just continue to move Darren Waller higher and higher up. At the tight end position, I really like to shoot for that upside. I don't want to draft a tight end as the tight end 6 and have them finish as the tight end 6. I want them to have some sort of upside to be a high-end tight end 1, put up 15-plus points. Like I said, I shoot for upside, and Darren Waller definitely has that upside. I think he'll probably be the leading receiver for the Giants, which at the tight end position is going to lead to some pretty impressive production. And then moving into the 8th and final tier, we have Chris Godwin, James Cook, Marquise Brown, Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Rashad White, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Trevor Lawrence, Jahan Dotson, and Mike Evans. I do think this was the start of like a ninth tier. I think it started with like T-Law, Dotson, and Evans, but for the sake of this video, just toss them all into tier 8. I think a lot of these wide receivers are very, very close together. This is kind of just the range where you go out and get your guy. For my last set of overall rankings, Judy and McLaurin were big fallers just due to their injuries. I talked about this in the wide receiver video, I believe, but I'd be more willing to draft these guys in leagues with, shallower teams, so 8, 10-team leagues, or with shallower starting lineups where you don't need to rely on them early on. Not saying I wouldn't take them in like your 12-team league or multiple flexes, but I just think they become more valuable because missing out on them early in the season isn't going to be as big of a hit to your lineup as it would be like if they'd be locked in starters and you don't have like great options to kind of swap in for them. Then looking at these running backs, I think all these guys are interesting in round 6. James Cook, Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara. I guess probably in some leagues you may have to reach for these guys in like late round 5. I think James Cook is actually like ranked as a late round 5 guy, but that would be like if every other player went ahead of him. I think, another tier of players where it's kind of like just go out, get your guy. James Cook and Rachaad White have both been risers in my rankings over the last, couple of weeks. Then we have Trevor Lawrence, and I do like Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback 8, but I feel like he gets a little bit pushed up in some drafts. Maybe I'm off on this, but I just really can't get around to like round 5 T-Law. Like sometimes I think you'll see those first 7 go, especially if like those top 7 get pushed up. It doesn't really matter what happens with like the top 3, but if you see Lamar go late round 3 and then you're seeing like Fields, Burrow, Herbert all go in round 4, then typically you're going to see Trevor Lawrence go in round 5. I just don't know if I can get there. Like in certain drafts, if you can see guys like Herbert and Fields fall to round 5, like I can't then, justify taking Trevor Lawrence there. I do think it's possible he makes that jump, and I do think he's going to make some sort of jump this season. I just don't know if we can be getting him like within a round of Herbert and Joe Burrow and Justin Fields. I just don't know if that should be happening. Still someone I think you can pick in round 6. In an ideal world, you get him in round 7, but I don't think he's going to fall there, unless it's kind of platform specific. So I do think like this ranking kind of gave him an appropriate distance from those other quarterbacks. But that is going to pretty much wrap it up for this one. Those are going to be my 8 tiers. You can see my full set of rankings in the description. Let me know how you guys are feeling about these rankings. Like I said, if I don't get the Superflex video out today, I apologize, but it should be out tomorrow at the latest. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.